pull yourself out of that valley, then it could stay the same, but it likely won't, because life is like this and there is just natural ebbs and flows. Yeah, I was like checking off the boxes. Yeah. Went to university, got my career, found the guy, started having babies, built the dream house in the country. All of those things was supposed to lead to happiness and joy and fulfillment. And none of them were, but I kept trucking along.
How do you learn to let go?
Be like, have I been here before? Yep, I have. And did I get through it? Yep, I did. So can I do it again?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tool for Rise, aka the #1 podcast in Winnipeg, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities. So, got some bad news. A lot of you guys aren't subscribed, but that's okay, because you can change that. There's a little red button in the bottom corner, and if you hit the subscribe button, it really shows us that this show is worth putting effort into, and it gives us a reason to put the city on the map. So if you haven't done that already, please hit that subscribe button. Today we have Lesley Steppler, the owner and CEO of Shine True Wellness. Today we talk about wellness, mental health, gut health, and how that relates to your overall well-being. If you're interested in mental health or you receive any value from this episode, again, hit that subscribe button and enjoy the episode.
I'd always wanted to be in a helping profession. So I remember being young and wanting to be like a therapist and a psychiatrist before I knew what they actually did. But and then I was thinking on the way here too, I was like, maybe it's all the talk shows that I watched as a child, like too young, watching like Maury and Jenny Jones. That's dating myself, but like back to that, like I wanted to sit with people and give them space to, you know, express their struggles. Like we keep so much of it in, right? So I decided to go into social work, and then that led me to do rural social work. So I was in school divisions and the healthcare system as well. And it was good. Like there's so many good parts to it, and I met so many amazing people that I'm still friends with. And yeah, like schools are fun. Yeah. They're always doing fun things, and kids are great. The things that they say and their perspective on things is a really fun place to be. But there were lots of things that didn't work for me. And so I began to have my own struggles. Like I would have anxiety about going to work. I definitely was struggling with depression too. So like just kind of like a bit of a roller coaster, like feeling fine and then feeling really low. And I started to have like sudden food intolerances and digestive problems, and I'd be like exhausted. So all of that was kind of happening, and that was basically all of my 20s, but I was forcing myself to still go to work. I was doing all of the shoulds. So yeah, like I went to university, got my career, found the guy, started having babies, built the dream house in the country, had more babies. I only have 2, but, and yeah, I was like checking off the boxes. Yeah. And so all of those things was supposed to lead to happiness and joy and fulfillment. And none of them were, but I kept trucking along. I basically became burnt out. So yeah, anxiety, depression, overwhelming stress. And I mean, I was working as a social worker, so they really stress you got to know how to take care of yourself, and it is a hard job. And I thought I had lots of self-care techniques, but they were proving not to be super useful. But yeah, I just kept trucking along. And then that's when I guess things just, I do have a personality where I'm not going to settle for, like, if this is not working, we need to problem solve. And so I went to lots of doctors, and I saw lots of specialists and did a ton of tests. Everything came back normal. Like everything's fine. You know, all of the lab works within the normal range. So yeah, that was really disheartening when you know that something's like not right, but yet you're being told that nothing's really wrong. Right. So that played into a lot of negative thoughts and thinking and how I felt about myself. But here I am still working and like holding space for others. Right. And all of that. But yeah, I had some really great coworkers that kind of led me into an alternative medicine field. And so I started working with naturopathic doctors and with like integrative and holistic nutritionists. And that's where things just started to make sense. Like there's this direct connection between our gut and our brain. And so even though like food intolerances and anxiety don't seem to be linked, I learned that they were. And so all the things that they were helping me with was making sense, and it was helping a bit. But then because of my personality, I was kind of like, well, I'm going to figure this out on my own. So that's when I decided to take a holistic nutrition course, and learned so much. And then it was even harder to work in the system and truly help people, because, you know, if we could be having a great conversation and working with kids, but like if their parents didn't understand, you know, certain things about nutrition even, and they were going home and drinking all the Coke and eating all the chips or whatever, just not getting the right nutrients in, I just knew it was going to be really hard to see any true healing or transformation. So yeah, that's what led me to have my own private practice, was just, I knew there was a different way to do things. And so that's what I'm doing now.
What was it like when you came to that realization that, hey, whatever the system was doing before is probably not the way that I believe or what I think should be going on? What was that realization?
There's elements of it that are very empowering and enlightening, where it's like, yeah, like we could totally be doing something different. But then, of course, that's when all of the limiting beliefs come up, or negative thoughts, which is my own personal stuff. But like, well, that's too scary for me to step outside of the comfort zone, or am I going to be the one to show people a different way? So yeah, that like throughout this whole time, like I've been on my healing journey too. And so I've learned so much about myself and released so many limiting beliefs to get to where I am.
What were some of them, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I think they're very, very common, so I don't mind talking about it. But like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't know enough. That was a big one. I always felt like I didn't know enough to, you know, have my own private practice or to teach people in a different way.
So going through your journey, what were some of the, I want to say, due to a lack of words, but what were some of the tactics that you used, you know, even though you were going through it, but you continued to push and you continued to, you know, go outside your comfort zone and be like, okay, I'm feeling this and that's okay, but let me try helping others, and in a byproduct of that is almost helping myself. So what was that journey like for you?
Amazing and so challenging at the same time. Like, yeah, I remember way back in the day, like someone was asking me like, well, if you're going through all these things, like how do you stay, you look like you have it all together basically. And one thing that was really helpful was starting a gratitude practice, which sounds really simple, and it's kind of like maybe overused, and there's all the hype around gratitude right now, but it can make all the difference, right? So it's not just being grateful for everything around you or what you have in your life. It's actually practicing that gratitude to ingrain these new thoughts, like new neural pathways in your brain. So yeah, like this was a long time ago, but in the thick of it all, like I would write down, I probably started with 3 to 5, but in the end, like wrote down 10 things that I was grateful for every single day, usually before bed. Like I had a cute little notebook that would sit by my bed and I'd write in it. And it really takes people out of kind of like that fixed mindset of like, this is just how it's going to be. I don't have what it takes to move out of it, and just gives you space to be thankful for what you have. And it's not, I know some people like this part is hard, where it's like, I still want more, but I can be grateful for what I have now too. And it's not settling either. Like it's really just like looking around. And when you start the practice, it's like, I'm grateful for my house, my kids, you know, the people in my life. Like it's all just really kind of like fluff. But the more you do it, then you go about your day actually looking for things, and it really does build this like inner sense of like joy, really, where I can't even count the times where I like look up to the sky and I'm just like, whoa, like look at all those colors. Like when you see a horizon, right? Like there can be like 10 different shades of blue or orange or whatever. And it's so cool that we get to experience that. And I know when I talk with clients about this, it is sometimes hard to, like when you're in a struggling space, it's hard to be like, you want me to look at the moon and be like, wow, the moon looks so cool tonight. It is hard to move to that space, but you have to start somewhere. So yeah, a gratitude practice is the one that stands out to me.
I find it something that I don't do a lot of, especially because, you know, just grinding through life and just keep going and going, that sometimes if I were to do it, it'd probably be like, hey, grateful for my family, a house, and just like not look past those things.
Yeah.
How long do you think it would like took you or take someone who was just in the gut of like just getting through life and just going and going to get to a point where they can look up at the sky and be like, hey, that's a great rainbow, or that's that's a great cloud.
Yeah. I think it could be days.
Yeah.
Or a week or two.
And what's something that you learned through doing that?
Probably a big piece is like how my spiritual practice has strengthened, or even just came to light. I definitely grew up thinking that like spirituality was religion. So like if I wasn't going to church or believing in God, then I didn't have spirituality, but it's so much more than that. It's really just like this, it's like inner peace, self-trust, knowing your purpose, being creative, believing in something higher than yourself. And so that's where the self-trust piece comes from. So I think gratitude is just part of that spirituality practice and strengthening that. I kind of forget what you asked, but
Just what you learned throughout.
right.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what I learned.
Okay.
Can I just say that I just wanted to interject and say that it's almost as if practicing gratitude helps you find the deeper meaning and beauty in life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like without that, how can you look at a sky and see that it's
true.
beautiful rather than just, it's just there,
Yeah.
you know?
How do you tell people to continue doing that when, you know, personally, like in the world of social media, I think that has a lot of influence on our mental health. When you go on social media, first video you see is like, oh, I just bought a Lamborghini, or like I just, you know, I'm 18 years old and I have like this mansion in LA. Like it's a lot of like FOMO, I like to call it, in terms of it's not realistic. And a lot of people fall into the trap of, okay, comparison, right? They compare that, "Hey, I'm not in that situation, why not?" And they go into this whole spiral of like, why me? Why am I in this situation? And so it's really hard in that sense of having that gratitude practice. What would you recommend people, even like, you know, in our 20s, like myself, where we can ground ourselves and really reflect on our life and be like, okay, I'm happy with where I am, or I'm content with where I am?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot to say
Yeah.
for that. So that's a great question. Like one thing is remembering that we are all abundant. And when we recognize that, we attract more abundance. So when we can be grateful for everything that we have right now and know that it's a journey, and like that just leads to another piece of like tapping into your desires, because I think that's what fuels our life and feeling joy and fulfillment, and you know, all the things that are opposite to like poor mental health, really. So if you have a true desire to want a Lamborghini or a mansion in the hills or whatever, then like there's your fuel for working towards it. But if you can check in with yourself and be like, is that a true desire, or is it like, do I feel like I want that because it would fulfill some type of need like that I feel like I'm lacking? Lack is the opposite of abundance, basically. So if you have this mindset of lack, where like I don't have enough, everybody else has more than me,
Right.
that's not how you get to those places either. So it's kind of, it's like recognizing all those pieces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's very valuable because, you know, I think that the main issue personally right now with how I see mental health affecting, it's primarily social media, where because a lot of influencers or a lot of friends, they would portray only the best side, right? They only show the perfect side of, I'm in Hawaii, right? And so when I feel like a lot of my friends, they see that, they fall into a trap of like, okay, I'm in Winnipeg, it's -40, and it's dark for 60% of the day. Like, how does one continue to reflect and be like, okay, how do they find that? How do they know the difference between like, okay, I desire this and like I want this truly, not just because I'm trying to fill a void in something. I don't know.
Yeah, it can be a lot of work, and I think that's where like coaching and counseling comes into play, because you can have someone outside of yourself, because like there's no way you can do this on your own, honestly. Like maybe through books and journaling and like piecing things apart, but it is so helpful to have someone else on the other side of your stories that you tell yourself, to keep you, you know, on track or motivated in the right way, or challenging you on certain thought patterns and stories that you do tell yourself. So it comes with that inner work. And so that's why I love counseling and coaching. And I think because I'm in it all the time, I sometimes forget that there even is some sort of stigma attached to it, and that people are still afraid to go for counseling or whatever. But I just see it as more proactive rather than reactive, right? So I personally don't want to see someone when they're like, everything's all gone to hell and like, I don't know what to do anymore, please help me.
Yeah.
I get that people need help in those situations, but I more want to work with people when they're like, this is like, I'm done with feeling this way. I'm ready to take back control of my thoughts and my mood, and like, let's get to work kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, social media is tough. I open up the apps all the time and start spinning stories like, you know, other coaches or counselors, because I follow them, are like doing this, and then I have my own imposter syndrome and feel like I don't fit in, or I'm not at the same level of them or whatever. So like all of that comes naturally with social media. So we have to be in control of our time and our habits, and know that it's so easy to just open up the apps and scroll, but like you have to have boundaries there.
Right.
And you have physical boundaries with like picking up your phone and setting maybe you have a timer on your phone or whatever, but you have to have these mental boundaries too, where it's like, I've learned enough about myself and what types of things I don't want to look at, because it sucks me back into like an old mindset, or, you know, some of those old beliefs come up. But if you're not even aware of them, then they will just keep spinning stories for you. So there's like that element of, we have to do the inner work, and maybe that's working with someone, or I mean, you can get so much awesome information from books and podcasts, and just doing your own work too. But
I think it also comes down to the realization as well. Like, so since you know, we're in the social media realm, where we're recording this and we post very frequently, I've trained my brain to look at social media like a different way, almost, in the sense that if I were to see someone flexing their large Lamborghini of some sort, I could look at it in a way, there's a reason why they're doing that. Whether that's to gain eyeballs, whether that's to push them somewhere, whether that's trying to do business, or whether it's just they're missing some sort of validation from something else. And so, like, you know, I'm a prime example. I do that myself as well, you know, like I'm not going to post a lot of the bad times in my life on social media, because those are for me. But when I'm happy, I'm love to share. Like, I went skiing yesterday. Like, I posted it. It was fun. It was a great time. But did I post the wipeout that I had 25 times? No, maybe not, right? Because those bruises are for me and my legs to now figure out. But I think just seeing a lot of social media, the realization is something that I've experienced personally. I think I can understand why you're saying that. It also comes down to like comments as well. You know, a lot of the reasons why, like, sometimes maybe people comment negative things is because they're trying to fill a void, or they're hurt people kind of the aspect.
Yeah.
Do you see that kind of realization when you look at social media and when you look at the world in general? Like, if not only have to be social media, but even when you're walking out in the world and you're interacting with people, do you see those kind of realizations?
Yeah. And like, I'm triggered all the time. Not all the time, but like a lot of things. And I know that that's where I still need to work on something or heal something. So even though like our triggers feel like we just want to get rid of them, like we don't want to have to deal with that, they suck, whatever. It's such like an eye-opening experience. Like that's where we gain the self-awareness and the self-understanding. Like that's the lesson that we still need. So I kind of like triggers now, like certain triggers, maybe not like, my ex-in-laws or whatever. But all of that, honestly, like it gives me perspective of like, okay, this still bothers me. I still need to heal this part. So even like negative comments, like on social media, if it's something directed at us, let's say, like it's gonna hurt because we're human, but there's a level of like how we take it, I guess, and if we take it to heart. So I think when we ourselves are doing well, like when we're experiencing confidence and energy and motivation and yeah, we feel fulfilled down to our soul, it's so much easier to just like let those things like shed away and not be so affected by them. Because you will see when people are take so much offense to something, or they immediately go on like the defense, even if you're just trying to have a conversation or like present something with someone, something to someone, it just speaks to their journey and where they're at, and not about you at all.
I like to give a lot of examples on the podcast, or provide like steps on which the audience can implement to go on their own journey.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, let's work through an example on how someone can at least start their mental wellness journey, even if they don't know they're struggling. How do you do that?
I love journaling. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people resist it. I mean, it takes effort,
Yeah.
but there's just so much going on in here all the time. And mind is only one part of like our whole self, right? Like if we look at that holistic self of mind, body, and soul, the mind can kind of take over. And there's something very almost magical about writing something down on paper and getting it out of here and onto paper. And it actually moves like whatever the pattern, the thought, or the belief is that you're struggling with, it moves it to a different part of your brain. So you're more able to like deal with it, basically. So journaling can be very easy. Nowadays, like you go to the bookstore and there's this whole section of journals. And so you don't even have to know what to write. Like just, you can pick like the 5-minute journal is an awesome journal to get started, and it's so quick and easy. So it would help you write down what you're grateful for again, and like things to look forward to, things you want to like check off your list today. And then in the evening you would write in it again, like things that went well, what did I learn today. So that's a good way to just get started with like being your best self, honestly. Not dealing with like a specific issue or trigger or whatever. But yeah, so I would say that would be one.
I'm so glad you brought up journaling, because I haven't really shared this with a lot of people, but I started journaling probably 690 something days ago. Well, I do it electronically. It's not the actual, but there's like a little app that I use, and it says, I just write the day at the top, and like day 600 something. Nice. And every day I would write it. And what I learned through that is life goes like this. There's ups and downs. And so I don't remember why I really started doing it, but I was probably at the lower end of the roller coaster. And then as I've gone through, I like it electronically because I can see what I was a year ago. It gives me like a sort of like Snapchat memories, but like for
Yeah.
for the journal.
Yeah.
And it says that, okay, a year ago I was feeling this, and I've started to notice like certain times of the year where I'm more productive than not. And I don't know if that's just a me thing, but just seeing it on paper and be like, hey, 2 years ago, this is what I was feeling. And it's not like I'm going in depth. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I did absolutely nothing today. I should probably do something. Or, hey, today was a good day I spent with family. Just something that I can see. But I love the idea that I think it really does help in terms of just putting your life in perspective. And also once, like, if there's a documentary, there's proof of, hey, this is how I got to where I am.
Yeah.
And you can look back. It's just so crazy to me to see the mindset that I was in, like, maybe a year ago versus 2 years ago versus 3 years ago and now. So I think thanks for bringing that up. But I haven't.
And our brain needs to celebrate and experience, like, the wins, whether, like, no matter what size the wins are.
Small W's.
Yes, that's how we build those new neural pathways so that we, move off the roads of negative thinking or negative thoughts, automatic negative thoughts. Like, we all have those, and then we build new pathways that can be more positive and more productive and successful to where we want to be in life.
You just learn so much. And then there's certain positive days and certain negative days, and then I'll read about them and be like, this is what I did a year ago, or this was a great day last year, or this was not so a great day last year.
Yeah.
But again, just going through those ebbs and flows of life is something that I realize. And now when other things come up in the future, whether it's a very positive high or very positive low, I'm able to realize, hey, let's just try to stay neutral and let's just try to live through it instead of going up and down.
Yeah, because if you have that evidence of, like, wow, I was at a really bad spot on this one day, but here I am. I'm doing fine today, so I clearly got through it. And, like, there's this whole idea of measuring your progress backwards too. So and comparing yourself to yourself only. So I think that would also help with the whole, like, social media and comparison thing too, is that you really should only be comparing yourself to yourself, right? So, like, if you're further along on your journey in a more positive way than you were yesterday or a year ago, like, that's all you need to know, right? So, and journaling can help you see that.
Yeah. I think a lot of, like, personally for me, I tend to, I don't journal every day, but I'll journal when I feel like I need to reflect on something. So those are usually, like, either the really high moments or really low moments.
Yeah.
And then usually my outlet is usually going for a run. I think that, like, it's my internal journal. But then one of the runs, I was listening to a podcast, and they said it was more on the idea of when people tend to compare themselves and they judge themselves for what the type of decisions they made. Or, like, why didn't I do that? Or why didn't I know this person wasn't the right person for me? And why didn't I end things sooner? Right? And the great thing that they said was, you shouldn't compare, or you shouldn't judge yourself because you didn't know the outcome, right? You know, your current self in the future knows the outcome of what happened, right? But you only had the resources to make the decisions that you did while you were in the moment, and you can't judge yourself for that. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of a book by Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah.
Have you heard that one?
No.
I can't think of the title either, but he's a really great author and speaks to that type of mindset.
Yeah, it was, sorry.
Yeah. You mentioned how you were just checking off boxes in the intro here, and you weren't feeling satisfied or relieved, or why was that? Why do you think that was?
I think that it's just because I was doing the shoulds, and I was people pleasing, and I was living up to, or thought I was, expectations that others had of me. And so that's why my spiritual practice has deepened so much over the last, decade, because it was nothing, it was non-existent. And so that's where I leaned on others and listened to others' plans for me, basically. So once I tapped into my own desires and realized what my values were, and what I really wanted out of life, and started to shed like the limiting beliefs and the shoulds, basically. Like I stopped shoulding on myself. And yeah, like it's been a journey and I'm still there, but that's also because your healing journey is not an A to B. There is no destination. It is just a journey. So when you talk about like ups and downs, like I think most people struggle with mental health because they have expectations that there's a certain way to be, and that like how many of us are perfectionists, right? Like we think things have to be a certain way or it's bad or it's wrong. And so I had that belief. Yeah, I lost a train of thought, but
Yeah, no, I think it's important because for me at least, I didn't even know the idea of mental health, to be honest. Like I think it was about 4 years ago where I like came terms to like that actual term, like mental health is the actual thing. And I can attest that to maybe the way that a lot of us grow up, where especially men are taught to be like, you can't show your emotions,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Like it's men can't cry, and that like you have to internalize and just like disregard your feelings in terms of you just gotta push through it. Basically, that's what they say.
Yeah.
And so, I think when Nolan brought this up in his episode, this was like episode 60 or something. I don't know, can't remember anymore. And he basically brought up the term of like mental health, and it's like it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And that really hit me. I was like, what do you mean? Like it's okay to be not okay? Like that's dumb. But then you slowly realize that, you know, it is truly okay to not be okay. Some days you're just not gonna feel well, but how would you say in those days, to frame it into a question, like when you're not feeling well, how do you, instead of going into negative self-talk, how do you understand yourself and be like, okay, it's okay, but let me keep moving forward throughout these days?
Well, understanding that life is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like there is natural ebbs and flows of life. It's not a matter of like if something bad will happen to you or if you're going to have a rough day. You will.
Yeah.
Like that is just life. So knowing that, being aware of it is definitely the first step. But then you have to have the tools and the strategies to use when you are in those moments. And one of them actually is just to surrender and let it happen. Like if you're not feeling like doing anything one day, like maybe you need some rest, maybe you're doing too much, and just being okay with that. Now if you have like 4 or 5 days in a row where like you're stuck in bed, you're not doing anything, like obviously then you might need some extra help to get out of that. But I think we have these beliefs where we have to be putting out all the time, like productive, right? Being productive. If I sat on the couch all day, something's wrong with me. But like it's not true, especially the way society is right now. Like it's very busy.
Yeah.
There's just all these expectations. We're all kind of on autopilot.
Yeah.
And just going with the motions. So I think we lose sight of our why. So that is like, I think the second part is knowing, like you have to know what lights you up and what your purpose is. And some of that is like, who do you want to serve? It doesn't matter what you do for work, like, or life, like you're still serving others in some way. What type of identity or personality do you do you want to embody? And like you can almost treat your life like businesses have to do this, right? Where they're like, this is our why, this is our mission statement, this is our vision. But we need to do that for ourselves too, or else we are just on autopilot. We're just checking the boxes and just going with the motions of life and not truly like experiencing life, I guess. And it's such a gift. Like it can feel like the most difficult burden basically, but it really is a gift. So you need to be in a space to be grateful for it and experience it in that way.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot, the purpose, the why. It's been a topic of discussion many times with ourselves internally and just with guests as well, of why do people do the things that they do, right? Why are we doing this podcast? Why do you do work with children? Why did you go down that route? And sometimes you can't really explain what that reason is, but deep down we all kind of have an understanding of this is why we're here. This is what we're doing. And so I'm interested to see what like your personal experience with like working in that school environment and hearing not only you have your own, everyone has their own issues that they deal with, but then hearing other people's issues and seeing how sometimes you can help them and sometimes it's just you feel helpless. What was your experience working with children and in that environment?
Yeah, it honestly feels like a lifetime ago. But it was very disheartening because I'd work with the ones who were struggling, whether that was with like more home stuff or in the classroom, things like that. But it's such a, and then now being a mom myself, my kids are 9 and 6, so they're both in school, and I went to read in their classrooms yesterday for I Love to Read Month, and it was so sweet to be back in a classroom. And like being a kid is it's such a special time, and you're really just like soaking up everything around you, right? And so I think, like, honestly, I know like teachers are burnt out, kids are just trying to have fun. Everybody kind of wants kids to just fit into these boxes and, you know, sit in your chair and like listen to me teach, and everyone's just kind of stressed, but kids just want to have fun. And so you see these stresses that the kids are now carrying, which does feel scary to me and saddens me. So I think, yeah, like looking back on it, I don't know, it does make me a little bit emotional and just like thinking this is how my kids are growing up now too. But I think if we can recognize that like it's okay to ask for help, and there are so many helpers out there in so many different spaces, like parenting support and nutritional, you know, like dietitians and support in that way, where we can learn more about ourselves and what we need. And yeah, I just think that like with people, if individually, I know people always look at it like collectively, like be kind to others and, you know, lend a helping hand, like whatever we can do as society, that's great. But it really is an inside job, because when we're happier, we're less stressed. And when we're taking care of ourselves and our kids, you know, whether that's your students or your own kids, like you're going to just feel better. And then that naturally emanates out, right? Like the energy is just different. So
I can relate a lot to what you're saying because I'm a student teacher, as I mentioned before. And I remember when I was in school, a lot of the teachers would just stand at the front and just yap. And so I've made a conscious decision that if I'm going to be in that position eventually, I want to build a relationship with the students that's maybe more than just me yapping in front of a classroom about the periodic table. And so I realized that it's just a simple like, hey, how are you? And like not going right into like, okay, like, you know, teachers have lessons planned. Like I'm slowly getting into this world, but I realized that a lot of teachers, they're just, okay, this is what we're doing, and next, let's hand in the assignment, let's go. Next. But a simple like starting off the classroom with, hey, how is everyone doing? Just because remember these kids, I'm in high school, but these kids are going from class to class to class, right? And it's pretty much the same thing every time. They're sitting there just staring at the board and writing down stuff, and that kind of rotates. So breaking up that flow, I've noticed a lot more students are just more open to and sharing. And high school is not the greatest environment, you know. There's it can be great for some people, it can be worse for others, and a lot of times you'll notice that it's like people will say, I'm the only one. No one else will understand. And that's something that I've also realized as well the first couple of times when a child has come up to me. I'm like, oh, are you okay? What's wrong? Like, let's talk about it. But one of the responses I did get was, nobody understands what I'm going through. And I'm sure you've received that response before, and how do you deal with that? And what do you say to that person that can assure them that, hey, somebody will understand, and whatever you're going through that's hard, but we're going to get through this, and this is what we're going to do to work through it, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a game, whatever it may be. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm feeling like the two things that matter in a situation like that is the validation and connection. And so I think that's what all of us are looking for. Like, it really doesn't matter if you're an adult or a kid, but we want to be validated. And a lot of adults that struggle didn't get that validation and that connection when they were younger. Even if, you know, you had the best parents and they, of course, they were doing their best, there's still pieces that are missing. And so, like, so if it's a kid, just validating, like, instead of trying to problem solve, like, just listening.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're really upset about that. That might be all you say. And then they're like, yeah, I am. I feel heard, or whatever, right? So a lot of people just jump to problem solve, and I do it all the time too, because I am a problem solver. I like to get down to business, right?
Yeah.
But people do just want to be heard. And like, even in relationships, right? Like, how often do you see in relationships, I don't know if you felt this, but like, I didn't ask for a solution. I just came home in a crappy mood, and I just want you to kind of like be there, right?
Sure.
And I know in schools you can't, or I don't know if you can nowadays, but you can't really give hugs and like really like be there for them. But you can feel that connection, I think, when it's genuine. Like, kids feel that. They know who they can go to and who they can trust. So I think it's amazing that like you have this opportunity and this mindset to be like, this is what I'm going to provide for kids in the school.
I just don't want to be a boring teacher.
Nobody
wants that. I don't want that.
No.
I like that you brought up the act of just like listening. I follow a very like a role model, which is Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
And he talks about just, and I started implementing this in my own life, where some people or like my friends will talk about it. And I'm like, before you go further, do you want me to listen, or do you want me to give you a solution?
Yes.
And he refers to it as sitting in the mud with the people. So I like to phrase it into a question: is how do you create that space to allow your friends to open up, to allow you to? It's like, because I believe it's an honor to have that opportunity to allow a space where, you know, your closest friends can open up to you. That's you know, and that you can sit there and be like, I'm here for you. Maybe I don't need to give you a solution, because me, coming from an engineering background, my first goal is like, how do I solve this?
Yes.
So how do I allow that to continue being a place where, you know, I can provide that space and be like, look, talk to me. What's going on?
It sounds like you know how,
Okay.
like, you're doing it. And
Yeah.
exactly what you just said, I think, is what people want to hear. And then I also feel like I need to point out too that, like, you don't have to hold that space for everyone, and not everyone's going to feel comfortable doing that with everybody. And
Right.
so the more we know ourselves, then we can lean on the people where it feels good, and not force something that doesn't feel good either. So yeah, I'm sure you can both think of, like, I can say these certain things to these certain friends, and yet maybe not to other people too.
Right.
Like, you know your spaces and your places. So you have to remember that. And then it's just communicating in those other ways. Like, I bet you have friends that have never heard that from somebody, or like an adult or whoever, and I'm sure they're just so appreciative of that.
This brings me to my next question, which should be like, I like to think I want to help everyone, right?
Right.
And I think you said this in the start of the conversation, where it's like, you can't help everyone, right? There's like points where people have to be willing to look at it from a different place of, okay, I'm done feeling this way and I want to heal. Whereas like, there's other people where I'm just like, how do you distinguish between, okay, this person's ready to be helped, or this person's not there yet?
I guess that's just come with my personal growth and healing as well, that I can be confident and say, like, this is my ideal client and this is who I want to work with. And then you just kind of naturally, I don't want to use the word repel, but that's what's coming to mind, where there's somebody else for those other people. Like, I've done so many different like modalities and worked with so many different professionals along my journey, and needed all of those different people at different times. So, you know, in the same way that I wouldn't, maybe like right now in this moment, I wouldn't go see a counselor even, but I have done that in the past, and it's been helpful. But right now I'm working with like different types of coaches to work on different things. So yeah, I think it's just more about like, again, your inner self and like where you're at on your journey. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
No, I forget what your question was now.
Do you think everyone needs that? Or are there people that don't need that? And I'll give a personal example where we're friends, right? We spend a lot of time together. We sit and talk with strangers, and we went to school in high school forever. But just the way that I think that I've been raised and the way that I live my life is I could be going through the worst thing ever, and he would never know. That's just, he would never know. I'd put a smile on my face and we'd sit here and we'd talk, even though he is my best friend. And I would just result to like either getting busy or doing other things and just moving on in that sense. And I don't know if I would benefit from speaking with someone. So do you think everyone would benefit from that kind of either counseling or talking or working through it, or am I crazy?
I think there's elements of it that are so helpful for everybody and anybody. But again, like it really just depends where you're at, because if I was to say, yeah, like there's so many benefits to counseling, you should go, and then you walk in and like you still have this thought of, but I'm fine, and like I don't see the benefit, then you're not going to get anything from it. Like I see. Yeah, I say to people I work with all the time, like if I'm running like a workshop or a group or something, like, or you know, some like digital program that I put out, I'm always typing like, you will get out of this program what you put into it as well. That's true. I think whatever you're walking into that with is going to play a factor. So, and I won't, but like I would just put it back on you and be like, well, like, what do you think? Yeah. And then I think you have to trust yourself on that as well.
How good is your gut instinct in terms of guiding you in your life? I think a lot of times there's decisions. Past example would be like, I like to use relationships because I think it just like works, where you know that person is not good for you, or that person is just not going to work out, but you want to feel good in that situation, where it's like you hope it works out, but your gut's telling you no, it's not gonna. So like, where do you draw the line? How do you make the decision on that?
That's a big topic. We could probably have a whole podcast episode on that. But that has honestly been what I've been honing, I guess, in the last couple of years, which again ties into that spiritual practice, because so like your gut instinct, your higher self, your inner wisdom, like that's all kind of the same thing, your soul, and then there's ego. And we can't get rid of our ego. It's there, it's a part of us. But if you can recognize if your ego is driving those decisions or those thoughts or actions versus my true self or my intuition is the other word I was looking for. That's where like the growth happens. So then you can piece it apart and be like, okay, so yeah, because I can't think of a specific example right now, but there's so many times where I'm feeling a certain way about, maybe like walking into a group, like I join a lot of different business women entrepreneurs. Like I work alone basically, so I have to join some groups and not feel so isolated. And so lately I've been doing more of that, and there's rooms that I walk into, and my ego will be like, you need to be here or you're gonna get, lonely and burnt out and isolated, and these other women are doing it, so you want to be in their presence. But my gut is like, I don't, like, I can't be here. Like, these aren't my people. Yeah, so that would be one example. So then for myself in that situation, like, you just need to trust that inner knowing. And we are not taught to trust that inner knowing. We are taught to base our decisions on logic. And so much of what we do in a day is driven by the ego. So the ego is like, it wants to control. It's very fear-based. If you feel something where you're like, you want to do something because you're scared of, like in a relationship example, being alone instead of being with somebody, then yeah, that would be like ego or logic even. But if you can trust your inner knowing where it's like, it's a feeling. Like, so I guess to answer your question, it's deciphering between the two and trusting which one you want to follow. And so what I've had to do in the last couple of years is follow my intuition and trust it. So situations and like my husband and I are separated right now. So I've been trusting, even though so much of me is like, you know, basing on the logic and we own a business together and we have beautiful children together and you want to keep a family together and you want, I had my dream home. I don't want to leave it. All of the logical things.
Yeah.
But if my inner knowing and my intuition is saying like this chapter is over, this doesn't feel right anymore. It's a feeling. It's just a sense of knowing. And everybody does experience their intuition a little bit differently. But yeah, from what I've learned in the last couple of years is like you have to learn what that feels like and sounds like to you versus the ego, and then just trust and surrender.
Wow. How do you learn to let go of situations that, you know, maybe you're holding on to, or relationships that you're holding on to? How do you, I don't want to say burn the bridge, but it's almost like you kind of need to move on to the next stage in your life. How does one do that?
I think it comes back to like almost everything we've already talked about, like knowing your true self and your why, and focusing on that. And yeah, like if my best friend heard that you asked me that question, she'd be laughing. She'd be like, Lesley doesn't know how to let go. Like, but that's old me. I held on to things for too long. And so like recognizing what part of that was my ego and that, or fear, and like limiting beliefs of like, if I'm not good enough to, you know, or it's scary to be on my own. Like it's really just recognizing what are your limiting beliefs, and then is that what's driving your decisions, and do you want it to be? Like some people might honestly be fine with it and want to play it safe and keep it cool, and then some of us don't want that. Like we can see that if we want to be our best selves, and if we want, you know, we only get this one amazing life that we have, and we want it to be the best, you have to move in a different direction and like trust the same. Yeah. And like intuition and higher self and all of that, like it wants what's best for you. So like there is no fear, and control is ego. And so higher self, intuition, that's all, not to make it sound like sunshine and roses, but like it should feel like a positive thing. And so I've had to differentiate between, is this like a good scary or a bad scary, right? Like, is it the scary that's keeping me the same and not letting me grow and heal? Or is it the kind that's pushing me? Because every time you're going to do something new, step outside your comfort zone, it's going to be a bit scary. And like that can fuel you and be good, or it keeps you stuck. So it's kind of just, it's honestly all about like self-trust and self-confidence and knowing yourself best. And like, then all the other stuff on the outside doesn't weigh as much, I guess.
So you mentioned how
gut health can have a very important fact on how you feel mentally, how you feel physically, and everything along that route. How specifically does that work, and what is the relationship there?
So I guess like one of my biggest passions is that we look at anxiety and depression and mental health struggles as symptoms and signs that like something is off balance and something is out of alignment, and not these lifelong diseases that we're just stuck with and we have to put up with. So I think that's really important, because if you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling depression, there can be so many causes to that. Like the list is long. And so that's what I hope to bring to the mental health field, is that instead of just, quickly prescribing a medication that's really just a Band-Aid, or even just like talk therapy where you go in and you vent for an hour and you leave, like, are we really getting to the root cause of what's happening here? So gut health is huge, because people used to operate in the way thinking that like a lot of our neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and all of those were in the brain, and so it was a brain health thing. But most of them are made in the gut. So if we don't have the right nutrients, like if we're nutrient deficient, we're not eating the right foods, or we have food intolerances, that depletes our nutrients as well. Stress depletes our nutrients. Lots of things, medications, our environment. So it all disrupts our gut. So basically you can think of it as like good bugs and bad bugs. Bacteria live in our gut. It's a microbiome. And there's many things happening in our world today that make the bad bugs kind of take over. And then there's not so many good bugs, which produce the serotonin, the dopamine, all those neurotransmitters that keep us motivated and happy and balanced. So that comes down to like what we're putting in our body, like for food, how we're dealing with stress, because if stress depletes the like you might be eating all the right foods, but then you're really stressed and you're not absorbing the nutrients or all of that. So that's kind of how gut health plays a factor.
So where is that balance? Like, how do you keep your nutrition good, but also balance that with, maybe you have some outlets that help you with your health or mental health and your stress levels. And then in turn, there's this overarching, you're good. How do you balance that relationship?
Like, I think it's different for everybody. So if you have to recognize when it's unbalanced. If you're not feeling great, like if you're, lots of people are tired after eating all the time, or feeling a little bit like tummy upset or nausea. So there's foundations. Like, is that what you mean? Like just what would be some foundations? Yeah. So I teach a balanced plate, balanced mood kind of idea. So it looks like a plate and it's sectioned off with different, macros you'd be looking at, but you do need a good chunk of protein on that plate, and you need a good chunk of vegetables. So rather than, I don't know about you guys, but like I grew up eating meat, potatoes, and like a little bit of vegetables, a little bit of peas or something, right? But if you can make like half that plate even vegetables, or like a good chunk, usually it's just more vegetables. They're so, you get so much pack for your punch. Like there's so many nutrients in vegetables. And then carbs are not bad. Carbs are not scary. Everyone's scared of carbs, but for mental health, like you do really need carbs. If we focus on complex carbs versus simple carbs, so complex carbs are digested slower, and so it's things like maybe sweet potato and vegetables and whole grains, versus simple carbs like it's basically like the white things, white flour, white sugar, white, pastries and baking, white pasta things like that. It's not that those things are bad. So I definitely don't work from a space of like demonizing any foods or good foods versus bad foods, but it's like these are the foundations that can make a healthy gut microbiome and a healthy brain, and everything work kind of in sync. So it's like veggies, complex carbs, protein, and healthy fats are also huge. Your brain is made up of mostly fat, and so all of those fats that we eat are brain food, the good fats. So not like the trans fats or like deep fried food and that kind of thing, but extra virgin olive oil and avocados and nuts and seeds.
But in the world of fast food and restaurants and all that, how does that play a role in terms of balancing your diet?
Yeah, well, it's not easy.
No.
Yeah.
I think the more we can eat at home and make our own food, I know not everyone wants to hear that, but like it really does help, because if you can be in control of what you're cooking and eating, there's obviously better options of restaurants than others, and so like that's important to know. But I think it is eating out less and being in your kitchen more, and like there's so many benefits to that as well, whether it's like family time or learning new skills or being proud of yourself for like meal prepping or you know, there's other things that can come with just being in your kitchen more. But
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's definitely hard. It's been like some of these apps are very easy.
yeah, to order food.
Don't-
Yeah. Yeah.
One click away. So,
And I like to work from, or like live from kind of like an 80-20 balance. That's what works for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of like hardcore people out there that are like 100%
100,
good stuff and 0% bad stuff, but I don't think that's sustainable or fun. Like, of course we want to order in pizza sometimes or go out to DQ
Yeah.
for ice cream, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever, it's fine. But I think if like 80% of the time you are nourishing your body with like nutrient dense foods and whole foods and the most natural forms of foods that we can, and doing all of the other lifestyle things that nourish us, the 20%, you have so much more room there to kind of do what you want with it.
when you're working with your clients and just people and talking with people in general, is that like a framework you also work through as well of like nutrition and all that? Like when someone comes to you and they say, hey, listen, I need help or whatever it might be, what are the things that you're working through with them?
Yeah, so it's still like that mind, body, spirit approach, but we start with where the client's at. So often I have people come that, you know, maybe do have more symptoms, like they've got like some skin issues and fatigue and anxiety. But it's like they want to get rid of those symptoms to then feel better, and then maybe then be able to implement the lifestyle stuff to deal with the anxiety. So we might be starting more with like assessing, what are they putting into their body and what's contributing to those symptoms. And then there's other people that come that are just like, they have all these dreams, but they can't get there because there's all these thoughts, like they're overthinking and they're perfectionists and that kind of thing. So then we really work on more of the mindset and tapping into their intuition and their inner soul and inner self. But yeah, so it really just depends where people are at.
Cool.
What would you say to those individuals that are the perfectionists, like the ones that are continuing, like even for us, for example, like we're always high driven individuals. We want to do the best and be the best, but there's also a balance where that can get exhausting, and you have to kind of realize that, okay, shit, I can't do this anymore. Like this is not sustainable for the long term. But how do you have a balance where that can be sustainable? Where you can still be highly motivated, but understand that if you need to take the time off, kind of thing.
It comes down to like recognizing what's driving your perfectionism and like where that even comes from. So within counseling, we have a system where we are able to go back into the past and see what's contributed to the way that we are today. But then we also look at the now, like what's happening now and how can we move out of that. And then also the future piece is like, well, what is my why? Like, why do I even, what do I want out of this one life, let's say. So I think that recognizing where a lot of perfectionism comes from, and, maybe that's social conditioning, like through schools or just society in general, or maybe it's things that your parents accidentally passed down to you or taught you about, just like productivity and striving to do and be your best all the time. It gives, once you know kind of where it comes from, it gives a bit, I think anyways, a bit of a relief, or like kind of like a weight off your shoulders of like, okay, this wasn't mine to begin with, and I don't think I want to carry it through or pass it down to future generations, because I see how it's not serving me anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like releasing a lot of those beliefs.
Yeah. How do you like release those hand-me-downs beliefs where, like, you know, your parents, maybe they have a certain core value, and of course your values are probably determined by the environment that you surround yourself in. But how do you justify, you know, letting go of those and being like, maybe this is not something that I agree with, and I'm going to move past that and go on my own journey?
Well, I think there's a really cool piece of like tapping into your intuition there and your gut instinct, like you brought up earlier, of knowing this isn't for me anymore. Like if you have any inkling of wanting to leave it behind, then I think there's your foundation and your starting point of like, hey, yep, that's in the past. I don't want to carry it forward with me. And you can let it go. But in my practice, we do really cool timeline work. So we do a little bit of time traveling where we can use certain strategies, techniques. So one of them is called mental and emotional release. And we go back into the past. It's like hardly any work for you consciously, but we're tapping into your unconscious mind and releasing the belief at the time where the decision was made. So this is kind of getting into some deeper stuff, but your unconscious mind made a decision that, whatever the limiting belief is, that you were going to, you know, be a perfectionist, or like be focused on like my worth is determined on my output, let's say, or like my productivity. Like I'm not worthy if I don't work every day. Like those are all different types of beliefs that we might have that were passed down to us. But where they're stored is your unconscious mind. So your conscious mind is, you know, everything you're currently thinking about. It's like the here and now. Your unconscious mind is where memories are stored, limiting beliefs. It's basically like, you can think of it like a file system in your brain. It's where things are stored. So if that's where your limiting beliefs are, that's what we need to tap into. So every time you do the work of like, you know, even if it's like meditating and journaling, you're like tapping into this other part of your brain. Because most of the time, like your unconscious brain is also what, you know, keeps your heart beating, or that's how you walk, right? Like you don't consciously think left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. You're unconsciously walking. So it has a huge role to play. But if we can work with it and use these really cool techniques to release the belief at the root, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's basically just like this weird magical, it's not actually, but thing that happens when we use the kind of like the meditative visualization practices. Yeah.
If you had any advice for someone who may be in like a struggling point in their life, or they're not in the best spot, they're in the valley, and they're maybe heading towards the peak, or at the current moment they feel like they're just stuck in the valley, what would you say to them, and how, like, give them a piece of advice that may help them?
Yeah. I would probably say what I think is huge is knowing that however you feel right now doesn't have to be how you will always feel. Like I hear that all the time, and I've thought that myself too. Like when you are feeling really low, you get hopeless because you think it's never ending. Like you think that it will always feel this way. And it's very wrong. Like it doesn't have to. I think if you don't make any changes and don't try to help yourself, pull yourself out of that valley, then it could stay the same, but it likely won't, because life is like this, and there is just natural ebbs and flows. And especially if you can, you know, tap into your memory and be like, have I been here before? Yep, I have. And did I get through it? Yep, I did. So can I do it again? Yeah, I guess so. That's kind of a conversation I have with a lot of people.
All right. I think that's the best way to end off the podcast. Thank you so much, Lesley, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. If you liked this episode, please check out Lesley. We'll tag everything in the description below. Until next time. Bye. That's it.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so